We're waiting to go live. Oh, now we're live. Good morning. Welcome to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. It is a glorious day. It's April 21st, 2023. And today we are we're really focusing on some exciting things. We're focusing on our cannabis bill, and we're focusing on our booze bills. And so we're looking at H470 and H270, and then we're going to go to the floor. So we're going to start, because Wendy is running, the commissioner's running a little late. We're going to start with David Keck, I believe, president of the Wine Council. Is that right, David?
I'm actually the the chair of the legislative committee. So Kendra Napik is the president.
Great. Okay. But if you'd be kind enough to follow up on your testimony of last week or the week before, I think the week before maybe, before Wendy joins us, that would be great.
Absolutely.
So you have a packet in front of you of all the alcohol related bills, and David had sent us a letter, I believe. Yep. And the third one down is David's letter, which from Stella Wines. Okay, David, it's yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you for having me back in. And I know that this bill is moving along, so I'll be brief. But to reiterate the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, I'm hoping that we can add Senate Bill 107 to the bill in discussion, H470 from the House, and to sort of bring that back to your attention. Senate Bill 107 was introduced by Senator Westman and Tucker Anderson, and involves the ability to acquire a limited first-class license in a tasting room, a satellite tasting room. And in the interest of staying sort of on the right side of both federal and state tied house laws, the one sort of change in this is that it would require the full glass pours to actually be the product of the manufacturer who owns the tasting room. There are a couple of reasons that this is important to small producers such as myself and many of the Vermont Grape and Wine Council members. One is that most of us are small producers and we work in tiny rural areas. And so the ability to have a tasting room in a more urban setting, as if Jeffersonville Main Street is an urban setting, but at least a more traveled thoroughfare, this would allow us to have a tasting room where we could do full glass pours, which financially makes it a much more viable economic venture for us. And also it sort of supports the community who want to support us by allowing them to come in and have a full glass of the wines that we produce in our tasting room, as opposed to just being restricted to the tasting pours that currently exist. The hope is that we could get this added into H470 so that we can go ahead and instead of trying to find loopholes or ways to kind of get around the current legislation that's pretty restrictive, it's to create a legal path forward for this that is much more conducive to business. So, any questions on that? Yeah.
Yeah, that is, and how, as the representative of the wine industry in Vermont, how many small producers do we have?
So we, according to recent polls, we have about 28 producers of wine in the state. We're working on gathering data. The Vermont Grape and Wine Council has been relatively, non-functional for the past 5 years or so. And so we just reinstated the board and re-elected officials in February of this year. And so we're starting to sort of gather data again with respect to who's functioning, who's commercial, et cetera. But we have 170 acres planted to grapes in the state as an agricultural product. That sort of ties directly to the fact that we have 28 commercial wineries, which means that most of that acreage is actually used by small producers or small growers who sell to the commercial producers.
So 28 producers, rough guess as to how many would benefit from this, what you're proposing?
I would say all but maybe 3. I think we have between, I think Shelburne, Boyden, and Boyden doesn't actually produce wine anymore as we lease their vineyards. Trying to think who else. Lincoln Peak is actually owned by Shelburne now. Those are kind of the producers on main thoroughfares that have tasting rooms in their production space. Everyone else produces offsite, either in our basements or barns or small production facilities that we lease elsewhere.
Right. Anybody have a question? I think we have language on this. Tucker's already drafted it, so it's. I think we're waiting to hear what Wendy and Charles have to say, because I don't think you've responded on this yet. Oh, good. Okay, great. Terrific. David, thank you. We will hear what DLL feels in a few moments.
Perfect.
Great. Okay.
That sounds great.
And wine questions for David at the moment? Here she is. Oh my God, your timing is perfection. And you match one of our paintings.
Oh, yes. My name tag was upside down and I ran into Julie. Would you like me to say?
Absolutely, because David has just testified.
Oh, great. Hi, David.
Good morning. How are you, Commissioner Knight?
Take a breath.
Thank you. Using this today. How is everyone?
We are well, and we have two things we want to chat with you about today. We are moving from our workforce development focus the last week and a half and returning to the booze bills and cannabis and several of our other bills. But so we are today have three tasks that we're hoping you and Charles can help us with. And of course, Tucker. Well, actually, everybody who's here. One is we would love to have a brief interview with you for you as commissioner so we can confirm you.
Okay.
Two, we would like to hear your response to some of the testimony we've heard 2 weeks ago. But we want to talk about the new language you're proposing for 470.
Yes.
And we want to look at the three additional bills that we have as to what we may want to tackle this year. What's I hate to say it, but what's manageable, given the time we have, quite honestly, which is almost none. And as you know, the morning committees are closing down May 3rd. So we have to have our bills out of here by May 3rd.
Right.
And we are wanting to have a thoughtful miscellaneous alcoholic beverage bill. And so we want to look at so the third thing we want to do is look at the other bills that are in our committee, like the one David just testified on, S107, which is the full pours for our rural manufacturers. So that is the third discussion, is what of the other pieces that have been proposed are we able to tackle this year?
I'm ready.
All right.
I'm ready. So for the record, my name is Wendy Knight. I'm the commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. May I ask if Skylar is
Skylar's behind you.
Hi, Skylar. Thanks for being here. Skylar is our Senior Director of Licensee Operations, Chief Skylar Janess, and I think Brandon King is also with us, Lieutenant Brandon King. No?
Nope, not yet, but maybe in the waiting.
Maybe at the cannabis discussion. So great. All right.
So the cannabis discussion, we're not starting
later.
10:15.
Understood.
11:15. No,
I think it's 10:11.
Why?
It's okay.
It's right here.
Okay.
It's 10:15.
Plus or minus.
Yeah.
Where would you like to start first?
We'd like to start with you, and we're
Yes.
Why you want to be commissioner again?
Oh,
And
it's the best job in state government.
We hear from everybody.
Cha-ching, cha-ching. So why do I want this job? Is that
Well,
is that the question?
our job is to
Yes.
reconfirm,
I totally
and you have been
understand that.
reappointed.
Yes.
And so,
yes.
in all honesty, we need to
Of course.
hear a little bit
Of course.
about why you like this job, what you consider the opportunities and
Yes,
challenges,
totally.
all
Got
that
it,
kind of
totally.
stuff.
So the job essentially is running two enterprise funds. So we are in a unique position in that we are a state agency, state department, that operates within the apparatus of the executive branch. And then we run two businesses in essence. So it's a $280 million enterprise. So it's really challenging and interesting, especially for someone like me who comes from the private sector, to be in a state department or, you know, an agency that's running two businesses. So the challenges are balancing that mission, right? We have a real strong public safety, responsible behavior mission. And then of course, we're responsible for growing sales of alcohol as a control state, and those proceeds go to the general fund. And then on the lottery side, those proceeds go to the education fund. So some of the things that we have been engaged with, I mean, I've been at the department since April 2021. I was first appointed as deputy. There was still the former commissioner I worked with for 3 months before he retired. And then July 2021, I was the appointing authority for the department. So, and then I was promoted to, I guess it's a promotion, yeah, right? Commissioner in December 2021. Is that right? Do I have my dates right? Okay.
That's good.
So what we've done is our focus has been on fully integrating the departments, because the legislature mandated that in 2018, but very little operationally had been done to integrate the departments. They were still operating in separate buildings. And so over the course of several months, we actually did a, continuous improvement process where the managers understood what was similar to their businesses. And then we fully integrated the departments so that there's a senior leadership team, the senior directors, which Skylar is one of them, and they have both liquor and lottery functions. We also did a move, so we've integrated, and this year our budget has one appropriation for the department because we're not operating siloed anymore. So that's been the biggest, I would say, work that we've done. The other priority has been on customer service. And so, our businesses like David Keck and the others that you hear from, the brewers, the wineries, like we license thousands of businesses in Vermont, and then we see them as business customers. And we're public servants, so there's that high level of excellence that we want to deliver. And so we want to make sure that our websites are clear. And very fundamental work, but it's important that people are able to reach you. And so periodically I call the numbers that are on our websites as I'm traveling to and from Montpelier, just to see like, how long does it take? Do you actually get a body, a voice, or are you going to answer?
So are you pleased with the improvements you've made in customer service?
Yes, we have done a lot to modernize. There's always room for improvement, but we've done a lot to modernize, and that's another aspect of bringing the department up to the 21st century of where the industry is. And that's why our reg rewrite that's up for LCAR next week, we did a overhaul of the regulations to sort of streamline them and modernize them. And some of the things that we've talked about in this committee is bringing the statutes up to where the industry is evolving, and the laws don't often evolve with them. So we're really trying to sort of modernize a lot of the things that we do. Are the 802 spirits, we're trying to bring in more product. We're resetting shelf sets so that the higher premium, higher growing categories like bourbon and whiskey are more prominent. We want to make sure that our Vermont products, we've just done a whole lot of things to make it easier to do business with us. And so this year we'll be launching a B2B website so that the on-premise licensees, the bars and restaurants, have a much more efficient and less expensive way of purchasing their alcohol. So those are just some of the examples. And on the lottery side, we had a major conversion. We're trying to make sure that our lottery products are in some of the, we call them the chain stores like Walmart, et cetera, so that we can, grow sales. Looking at which price points make sense. Actually, the $25 tickets are doing well. So that's an example of some of the things that we've been doing for the last year.
So, because I want to move to booze, would you be kind enough, or have Charles send us also a short bio?
I will absolutely do that.
That would be great.
Yeah. Terrific.
And we will, before we go to the floor, we'll take a vote on this, unless you want. So we will be voting on this today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service, and thank you for all those priorities that you're working hard on. So I think
my pleasure.
Or, any questions for Wendy before we?
This might be this is a longer term question, but just how do you integrate or address or coordinate with the folks who are handling the substance abuse issues? Because obviously
it's a
That's
big
what
part of our work, and I am happy to give you more information and details. We have an education unit. We have 2 people currently in there. I'm hoping at some point to add another person. And so that's the unit that works really closely with our prevention partners in the Department of Health to let people, it's not just letting the licensees know about carding and things like that, but it's all about, substance misuse and what are the signs. And so we do a lot of that. And I'm actually looking forward to doing a lot more, because that's when I noticed on the Howard Center contract we have for Vermont Lottery and problem gambling, that it was really reactive and it was not proactive. So I started having conversations with the health department and now the mental health department about, okay, how do we do this better? We actually need to do a lot more in terms of consumer awareness and public awareness. So I'm actually
which is reflected in the work that's embedded in sports.
correct.
In sports wagering.
No, sports wagering. So I think there's a lot more we can do, and that's my intention, is to put some more resources on it.
And if I understood you correctly, your intention is to sort of fold some of all the abuse
Absolutely.
work into what the sort of updated,
Yes.
the new work in the sports wagering.
Yes, we're working on an MOU that will give the existing funds we have for problem gambling on the Vermont Lottery side with the Department of Mental Health.
Yeah.
And giving them the money and.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Rather than duplicating.
Correct. And so what we will do though, is we will supplement that work, because I think it's really important that we continue to do the education.
And continue to have a relationship.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And somehow integrating the best parts of that also in our alcohol, which costs our state, alcohol abuse costs our state so much in human trauma and court time and just money.
Yeah.
I mean, what giveth, taketh, sadly, and what giveth is modest compared to what it taketh. Still, I mean, it costs us hundreds of millions of dollars to alcohol. Just saying.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's important to acknowledge that when we're talking.
So
Yes. No doubt.
shifting, so thank you.
Of course.
Unless there's another question, we're ready to shift.
And
Okay.
I have experience in the food and beverage hospitality space, which my bio will tell you. Okay,
Which it makes you sort of, perfect person to do this at this moment.
thank you. I hope so. I think so.
Okay, great.
I'm trying.
you. Thank you. Well, that's what we're all trying.
I'm trying.
I'm trying, sure. Which is sadly why I have to move us along. I know, it's hateful, but,
Okay.
but because we could dwell on some of these issues for a long time. So we're going to shift, I think, to we have walked through 470, and I think what we're going to do is shift to your response to some of the testimony we've heard. So what would you like to do first? Because we have some new language to consider, and we have response to
Yes.
testimony from the past.
Yes.
So where
May
should we
May
start?
we start with our proposed technical changes to add to?
Some of which are a little more substantive than fully technical, but yes, absolutely. And I believe we have
Yes.
those in our packet. Is that right, Scott?
Those
Okay.
are it would be the festival permit, educational sampling change. It would be the board technical corrections,
Yeah,
and
no,
then
We're just pulling it
fourth
up,
class license. So
and I don't see. So Tucker, so here is your proposal, and I'm not sure I see Tucker's. We don't have anything.
here is the
Yeah,
language, if you need this. This is
No,
actually.
we all have that in our
Okay.
packet. And Tucker, I believe, has drafted the language. So why don't we start with you and why you're proposing these changes, and then we'll go to Tucker and just maybe review, or do you want to walk through the changes? Let's start with the purpose and then. we'll
Okay,
look at the
I'll start with the purpose. I'm actually gonna start from the easiest, which is the board department technical corrections. That's the middle of this.
Yep, that's
All
on.
right, number 2, what's the page? I really hate when I make
It doesn't
documents
have
and I
pages.
don't have page numbers.
One,
Oh,
two,
Put it on the
It's
list.
on, it's on page 5.
okay,
One,
apologies
Blair
about
Harry.
that.
No, it's on
we can
page
help you.
No, it's my fault.
no big deal.
Drives me
It
nuts.
says Title VII Board and
Yeah,
Department
okay,
Responsibilities.
so
and it's on page, in the bill, it is, I can't remember what page it's on, but anyway, go for it.
Okay, the point here is that some of the things that exist in Title VII related to department duties or commissioner duties or board duties are actually inaccurate. They don't reflect what actually happens. And so this is meant to clean up some of that, right? So it's like the commissioner is the appointing authority of the department. It's also the department is the one that's, let's say, contract with the department. The department is the one that maintains the contracts with anybody. It's not the board that maintains the
Got it.
contracts. So we do the contracts on behalf of the executive branch. And then I'm just cleaning up, it's actually Division of Liquor Control. So some of these are just cleaning things up.
So this is, okay,
And the budget
So yes,
preparation is somebody else up here?
yeah, so I put together a budget for finance and management in the executive branch. The board doesn't put together a budget.
Okay, so the board doesn't review the budget.
Correct.
Okay,
Adam Gresham.
so
reviews my
you
budget.
do prepare it. Do you want to keep that part of the language? And just not submit it to the board for review? I mean, you might want to keep that.
The
That's
commissioner,
so
The
we,
board doesn't review your budget?
no, the board doesn't review the budget. The board is basically a quasi judicial enforcement board.
Okay.
And so the department is part of the executive branch and the board doesn't have those duties. So, Commissioner, you're saying, yes,
Well,
so,
I-
yeah, sure, the commissioner shall annually prepare a budget for the department,
yeah, just period.
period. Thank you.
so, and keep that, just so we're keeping Tucker. Tucker, are you hearing these ideas? Okay, he's all on.
And
top.
does the board know this?
Yes. Yes, of course, yes, of course. I have a good relationship with
Yeah.
the board, we talk weekly, and, or I do with the chair.
Because one of
so-
our jobs also, even though we don't put it on the floor, is to talk to all the people who've been reappointed to the board. One of our frustrations is some of them are returning our phone calls, not
I
necessarily with
do
this.
have my 3 done.
Okay, great. We're gonna chat about it. Terrific.
And then
Okay, keep moving. We're,
the liquor control investigators are employed by the department, not the board.
so the director of enforcement, okay,
Correct,
great.
that's what I've had.
So in B.
Yep.
It's employed by the division, right?
Correct, the Division of Liquor Control, not the board. Same thing with the search warrants, the Commissioner of Liquor and Lottery and investigator employed by the Division of Liquor Control, not the board. Refusal and neglect of officers to perform duties, again, it's the Division of Liquor Control. The department, Title VII tobacco. It's, the department is providing simple instructions for licensees. These are just clarifications, right? Like, this is the work we do, not the board.
Did the board used to do this and it changed?
I don't know.
All right.
But currently for the last X number of years, this is how it's been functioning.
Correct, I would say several years. And that's, so this is the Department of Liquor and Lottery may develop and operate a lottery in a contractual agreement with the vendors. So again, it's the department that's doing the contracts on behalf of the state.
That makes sense.
The department shall make an annual report to the governor in March. Post audits, again, it's the department that's doing that work.
What a peculiar thing. The 10th day of March. What is the reasoning behind that strange date? Tucker, do you know? Do you know?
I have no idea.
I mean, it's just
Anybody who-
unusual.
Explain our strange.
I wouldn't dare explain the strange things that are in.
Oh,
although we
I
do
know.
have-
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
tell us.
You're asking me a question is why we changed that. Because of the,
Yeah.
the financial, it's the finance team. We don't have our year end by January.
Got
So
it.
That's
Okay,
why they
that's
asked for
helpful.
me to change that. Sorry. I'm sleep deprived. at this
No,
point,
that's
so.
okay.
And I spilled my coffee all over the car, which is why I'm late.
Would you like
Oh,
more
no.
coffee?
Not yet. So that, I'm sorry. That was it because we just don't have the
That is a
financial report.
massive-
That is the answer. Thank you.
So.
And it's interesting that you don't want to do a recommendation for legislation, but I guess you can do that other ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
No,
always here.
that the board
Always
doesn't
here.
do
Right.
that.
It's
That
the
the department
department is
makes,
doing
in the
that.
miscellaneous booze bill, the department does make recommendations
Yes.
for changes,
Yes.
but not the board. I believe that's what.
The
That's
board
exactly-
doesn't make. So what does the board do?
So the board is a quasi judicial enforcement. They hear enforcement cases.
Okay.
So when we have Title VII violations and we issue a ticket and somebody wants to contest that, they come to the board.
Okay.
If we have regulations and someone wants to do something different than those regulations, or they want an exception, they come to the board,
Okay. It is a board,
basically.
it's a judicial board, not a government.
Correct. They
That's a
are
good way of putting it.
full-time. These folks are not, so in some states you have a full-time liquor board or
Yes.
commission that have full-time commissioners. And this is a part-time board that comes once a month and we're supposed to pay them
Okay.
$50.
So then so that is really what
It's a
all
board.
these recommendations, until we get to fourth class license, that is
Correct.
really what we're talking about, is clarifying.
Absolutely.
Okay. Got it.
So would you like me to move on to fourth class license?
Whichever you want to do next.
Yes, so partly this is in response, this is one of the things that we have heard from the manufacturers, and Mr. Keck has spoken about this, so we've talked about fourth class licenses, and it's in the bill. the
And remind us what a
omnibus
fourth
bill.
class license is.
Yes,
for
I will
everyone.
remind you. So a fourth class license is for a manufacturer to have a tasting room or a farmer's market permit. So it's their ability to sample their product and sell their unopened bottles in tasting rooms or farmers markets. So what's in the omnibus bill right now is that expansion of the fourth class license so that they can have more farmers market permits. We talked about that, and I think you've had testimony on that.
Yeah.
And the second piece of that we're proposing is that there is one of those fourth class licenses can be for a tasting room where they can serve up to 5 other Vermont manufactured products. And this is meant to showcase Vermont, to be in other locations. So our thought is we should not just have one fourth class tasting location where you can serve up to 5 other, but you have 2. So we're giving the ability of our Vermont manufacturers to have an additional opportunity to have their products sampled and purchased. So, so if I may, this is our sort of alternative to 107, which is the
That's what.
bill that asks for off-site tasting rooms, okay? So
It's asking for a first class license. to sell
Correct.
Their
a
products.
first class license. So if I can remind
That full
everybody
course,
what a first class license is the ability to serve beer and wine on premise. Okay, that's usually the bars and the restaurants, right? The third class is the ability to serve distilled spirits at and on premise. So the first and third class usually go together. This 107 is basically asking to have a first class license for the ability to serve beer and wine at a separate location. As Tucker has pointed out,
We understood it at their manufacturing.
No,
No.
they want off. They can do manufacturing now. but their manufacturing is up a dirt road on
That
the
is
side of a mountain.
Sure. So I understand that in Vermont, we have rural cideries and wineries and breweries. And I understand the desire to want to have your product available across Vermont in more populated places. The way you can do that, you have a partner, right? You're a manufacturer and you sell your product to bars and restaurants, and they serve the full pours of your product. The problem, if we're going down this route, is you run into the federal tied house prohibitions, because you're now having a manufacturer that's serving their own alcohol on an on-premise location. Those are meant to be distinct. On-premise means you drink it there.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you drink it
on
there,
premise.
as opposed to
Alright.
going into a wine store or
And
a
take it
convenience
home.
and buy a bottle and take it home. So
Okay.
our thought about this is that you expand the ability to have your manufacturers have a fourth class tasting room that it gives the additional products.
Does it give them the additional opportunity to do a full pour?
That's something that so I'm suggesting that's the route to look at, not to allow them a first class license. And the other thing about this is you're then trying to define this first class license differently than the existing first class
Which is a
license.
problem for all.
Correct, it's a
Right,
problem.
I know that.
So the route for manufacturers is really like looking at the fourth class tasting room. Right now, the way the language is, at a tasting room, you can pour up to 8 ounces of wine. Okay, so that is a full pour and a half, almost. I mean, a pour of wine is 5 ounces. So if you're allowed up to 8 ounces, there's a glass and a half.
Right.
So they already have the ability to do that. Tucker, sorry.
Yes, talk
Tucker
about it.
Anderson, legislative council. One thing that I would add is that the first class licenses statute was amended 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. I'm very tired this morning. To allow manufacturers to get a first class license so that they can serve on their property full pours of their alcoholic beverages. And they were exempted from the food service and adequate. and
I remember
sanitary
that,
kitchen
yes.
requirements.
Right.
So you
So they're
do have full
already-
pours on the manufacturing premises through a first class license already. What 107 does is it allows them to open effectively that same full pour bar at a location separate from their manufacturing facility. There are state tied house laws with exceptions that are granted only to manufacturers of malt beverages.
That's the discussion I was here for many years ago.
Yeah, okay.
So we let malt beverages do this?
Malt beverage manufacturers are granted a limited exemption from the state's tied house provisions. And I can send the committee the statute as soon as the
And
state
a
has
tie-
that is functioning.
a tied house is where the manufacturer owns
The retail
the
establishment
retail establishment. And
and could induce people to drink more than they normally would. That was the
That's-
basis for the tied.
That's the
house.
assumption,
Well,
right?
that's
Mhm.
interesting.
That's the assumption
But
that's
that-
embedded in the Tied House laws. So
Okay,
think
but
England,
any
think,
bar,
you know, the Green Man Pub, where they're manufacturing it and selling, and they're all over, and it's basically a monopoly,
So
right?
And
I don't know.
the purpose of the tied house laws, to be clear, sorry.
David? Yeah,
So the original purpose of the tied house laws was to prevent that monopolization at the exclusion of other beverages. That was the intention of that law, was that if we got a first class license in our own brew pub, we could exclude other producers. Now, the reason for the verbiage that we came up with was to state that it was for a single manufacturer to pour their own beverage. So it's not, it is in fact at the exclusion by law. I completely agree with Commissioner Knight that expanding the fourth class permit would be a more successful way to go about this. I think the challenge is that as the law currently exists for fourth class, we're allowed to pour 8 ounces provided that it is in 1.5 or 2 ounce increments, that's not a glass of wine. That's 4 very small glasses of wine.
Okay, thank you. Let's let the commissioner finish presenting. It does say on line 2 in this fourth that they could sell unopened containers, so they can sell their product,
Right.
or full pours of up to 5. Yeah, but not full pours of their own.
Correct. And this is where I think we need, so this, have been open to trying to figure this out for a couple of years now, right? So one of my thought processes, okay, like we need to look at the sizes then in the fourth class license. But as the chief points out to me, Skylar, that is exactly Tide House, because you're having a manufacturer that's only pouring a full pour of their own product. Skylar, do you want to weigh in on this right now? May I ask you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Skylar would be helpful. I think it sounds like a good moment for you to jump in.
Yeah, happy to. Good morning, everyone. For the record, my name is Skylar Janess. I'm the Senior Director of Licensee Operations for the Department of Liquor and Lottery. Yeah, so to the commissioner's sentiment, really, when we look at these, you have to understand that we don't only deal with the manufacturer tier. We also have a very strong partnership relationship with our on-premise licensees. And understanding that a manufacturer who then enters into that retail market in a direct route has an undue competitive advantage against our small bar restaurant owners, where they have to work through a wholesale distribution tier. They have all of the protections and benefits of the 3-tier system in place, and they occupy their one tier, that retail tier. What this looks to do, this expansion really kind of blends and condenses the two tiers, meaning it cuts out our wholesale tier, and it brings a path to market from the manufacturer producing the product direct to on-premise retail tier. So in a lot of ways, and I know that Title VII has some exemptions and some exceptions to our 3-tier system, particularly to support the manufacturing industry. We do want to ensure on a certain level, that one, we understand that a first class license, what it is, the more it gets blended and changed, it becomes particularly difficult to license. So you have this version of a first class that's available to a subset of people. The reality is a first class license is our on-premise malt and wine license, right? So that's where you go to buy on-premise beer and wine. And the rules should be somewhat similar. There shouldn't be a separate set of rules for X individuals or Y individuals. It becomes particularly difficult to enforce, and the public doesn't fully understand these rules themselves. So what the commissioner, I think, alluded to is our fourth class license was always the way for our manufacturers to offer products to the public in a retail setting, whether it's selling it to go in closed containers or offering samples. Now, we could talk about, what the way that sampling. Yes, ma'am.
Skylar, can I just interrupt you? Selling it to go, i.e. in unopened containers, like in their own wine bottles.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
keep going.
I think we could.
It's not to go cocktails here. I mean, it's
That's
not
correct.
to go wine.
That's right. It is closed container bottles or cases of their product to go. I do think it would make more sense, understanding our licensing schema, to look at an expansion of our fourth class, because that has historically been the license in which we issue to manufacturers to bring their product direct to retail to the consumer. So we could potentially look about an expansion. I think it would make most sense to expand their ability to pour and offer their product via that license.
So, I think at first blush or at second blush, having heard this now twice, I think that makes sense. And I guess what at this point, I would, given how much more we need to go through today, we're almost there. I feel like we're almost there. David, I'm getting the sense that between the department and the wine, the grape and wine crowd, we're almost there. Could we ask you to continue work on this and come back to us with a proposal, you can both, because I would agree, I think we don't want to continue to dilute, and I don't know where my committee is on this, but I don't think we want to continue to dilute the license system we have at the moment, and instead improve and expand the fourth class license. So if you
Yeah.
could continue work
Yes.
on this and come back to us, that
Yes,
would be.
we'll internally at the department look at this and propose a path
And
forward
work
with some
with-
language.
with-
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
absolutely.
so when,
Okay,
Yes.
and
just
Randy,
two,
you
I
have a
think,
question?
quick questions. Does manufacturer automatically mean a Vermont manufacturer?
Nope. Yes, wait, no, Skylar?
Because we say Vermont manufacturer in some
no.
places and not in others.
So Skylar, can you, I'm sleep deprived, maybe you can.
Yes. Yeah, in the context of who, if the question is in the context of who's eligible for a fourth class license, that is only licensed Vermont manufacturers. We wouldn't, we don't issue a fourth class license to, say, a brewery out of New York or a winery out of California to come and establish a fourth class space in the state.
Okay, great. So somewhere manufacturers is defined as Vermont manufacturers.
Yes.
Well, we do license other manufacturers. We work with national manufacturers.
Right.
They're just not allowed to have the fourth class.
Well, that's why I was
Yes.
wondering.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that, but okay. My other question was fourth, so it sounds like the proposal of the department is just to allow an additional fourth class license rather than to change the parameters.
So we have two existing proposals on fourth class, which is expanding the farmers markets. We've suggested we have an additional fourth class license location to serve up to 5. In addition, we will talk and decide what other changes need to be made in order to address what's sought in 107.
But doing it
Okay,
under
so
the
there's
fourth
more to
class.
Correct, more to
Okay.
come.
Okay,
Right.
but this makes sense to me for what
Yeah,
it's.
But even, so
The,
the more to come is
Not
the
changing.
third thing. You
Okay.
already have two things separate and apart from the more to come,
okay,
Okay, but if the problem is,
right? I mean,
So,
there are there's the expansion of the farmer's market permit, which is already in H 470. Is that the name of the
Right,
omnibus
exactly.
bill? We have our addition in this memo, which I
Right.
described, which is the addition of another location up to 5 other Vermont products. Those are two things separate apart from the more to come.
okay,
So we will work internally and with David on what other thing we might be able to change that would allow what David wants in
Right.
107.
and then and then we're gonna go to the beginning of your memo.
no,
Yes,
I'm working through Tide House and
yes.
Okay, well, I
If-
could spend a
if
lot of
the
time there.
base issue is that there are very few manufacturers that have their facility there on a main road, okay?
Yep,
And that's where you get people, they don't go up a mountain
correct.
usually. So if what they want is an ability to have a tasting room on a main road, then this should do it. They just have to find a place to rent, right?
So they have an ability right now under the fourth class license structure
Yeah,
to have,
you go to farmer's market.
right, and to set up tasting room locations. They can set up 5 other tasting room locations.
Okay,
So they can go to the main room, Smuggler's Notch does that in Burlington. They have a place in Burlington. They can serve samples there. The
Yes.
size limit is samples.
Right.
It's meant for consumers to literally get a taste of the product, see what it's like and
Right.
say, wow, I really like that. I'm gonna
that
buy
I
it.
want to taste it before.
Correct,
I'm going back to New York and I want to
Correct.
know what it tastes like
Before I
come home
buy
with
it.
3 bottles.
correct. What the request is from David in 107 is to actually sit and have a glass of wine somewhere other than his Cambridge winery, which is way up.
Yes, in Cambridge.
Correct, thank you. So that's the piece that we'll work on. Now,
Okay, so you can, yeah, there's somebody down at the antique mall that's, I think that's a distillery. that's-
Vermont Spirits in
Yeah.
Quechee?
Well, they're located there,
Yes.
but somebody in
Yeah.
the mall does
Yes,
tasting.
yes,
But I
exactly.
thought it was a winery.
Well,
But as you walk in the door, you can,
yes, you can have samples of beer, wine,
yeah,
spirits.
Right.
cider?
So
Yes.
let's move to the beginning of your memo because
Okay.
I'm just
Yes,
cognizant
yes,
of our time.
Yes, thank you. Scott, this basically is to clarify
So
something.
we're going back to the front.
Okay.
70, which we passed, I think it was 2 years ago at this point, had a change with the festival permits, meaning the brew festival permits. That was a couple of years in the making. It finally got passed. What that did is it inadvertently eliminated the option for chambers and cultural organizations to secure a liquor license at their art festival or their cultural festival, because the change that Act 70 meant basically defined a festival permit as the primary purpose is to consume alcohol. Well, the primary purpose of an art and cultural festival is not to, it's just
No,
to.
that's the Brew Fest in
Correct.
Burlington.
So this change that we're proposing clears that up, because
Okay.
since Act 70, we've had a number of manufacturers that have not
One
been
in my
able.
district.
Yes, and one in your district, in your district, in your district.
But my
because-
district is very vocal.
So this is attempt
We're
to
all our
clean
districts.
that up. So
Yeah,
Skylar,
okay,
I
great.
would
We
ask
like
Skylar
cleanup.
to
Because
walk
he was
that.
going to the Garlic Festival, and I think
Correct.
that's where the problem
Yes, ma'am.
started.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. So Skylar is gonna
Here,
explain this for
Okay.
us.
Skylar, take it away.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Commissioner. I'll keep this really succinct. Wendy, I think you did a really good job surmising this. So Act 70 did a great job providing public safety protections for our brew fests, but the unintended consequence, I'm afraid, is that it did exclude a certain sector of our very vibrant communities to bring beverage alcohol to events that's not their primary purpose. So what we're proposing is a bit of an undo to the change of the festival permit, kind of reestablishing the festival permit as it sat prior to Act 70 and changing the name a little bit. So we would instead of calling it a festival permit, we would call it a limited event, which would allow for alcohol to be at the garlic festivals, be at these community organized folk arts festivals, and allow for beverage alcohol to be sold by the glass at those events. But still maintain the public safety protections that were put into place by Act 70 by making some changes to an existing permit known as an educational sampling permit, which if you can do a side-by-side comparison to the festival permit as it sits today and the educational sampling permit as it sits today, they're very, very similar permits as they are, missing just some small pieces of verbiage. So we're thinking, we're proposing that we could call that permit, instead of an educational sampling permit, we would call that permit something to the effect of, and I'm just scanning for the name, a sampling event permit. Yes, we do believe that approach would restore the benefits of the festival permit to Act 70, maintain the public safety constraints that were placed on our brew fests, and really bring some much needed relief to the industry in terms of their needs.
So Skylar, do I understand that you're proposing 2 new permits that would combine and re-articulate the purposes? One is the limited event festival permit.
We're just renaming them.
That's renaming it. And then where's the sampling event permit? That's a
2
second one.
Yeah,
They're
that's
2 separate.
correct. So let's go by section numbers. 253 has historically been our festival permit. So that's Title 7 subsection 253.
Yeah,
and
we got that on the front page.
okay. And
Yeah.
then the second permit is subsection 251, which has historically been known as the educational sampling event
It's on the
permit.
second page. Yep, got it.
So not proposing
got it.
adding 2 new, but simply modifying 2 existing to better align with what we believe was actually the legislative intent of Act 70.
So modifying 2 existing permits to capture both intent and purpose.
And restore an unintended use case that was
right.
removed. That's right.
Which the communities really should have.
So this is not it's an expansion of the current situation, but they used to have this ability.
They did. So perfect examples that I like to use were the not so 4th of July event in Waterbury that was put on by the Rotary. Middle of Barfield, they would have a small tent pop up where they could sell some beverage alcohol by the glass. Now, the only thing we can offer them is our festival permit, which means they need to charge a cover charge. And that means that the events are smaller, like a brew fest. So it just forced the event to feel like a brew fest when it never felt like a brew fest before.
They
Right.
get into the Waterbury, not quite.
Got it. Okay,
So just two other questions.
Restoring what was.
So the
Right.
local control commissioners, that's the town
Town.
select board or whoever it is.
Yeah,
Whoever
they
the
always
town
look
has
Liquor
decided.
control
They
board.
always
We
get to
used have
decide.
hats to
Yeah.
put on
Yeah.
and off.
That's funny. And then this is not for just Vermont manufacturers. This is for all manufacturers, right?
This is,
For all
is for
providers.
all, anybody. It's not just manufacturers. It could be a chamber of commerce or
No,
the garlic festival.
But the
one-
source of the alcohol isn't.
Correct. It's not
protected
just Vermont
It-
products.
Your beer tent, right, where they're selling beer or other things at a festival, but you have to consume it within the
Right.
fenced off
Right,
beer tent, but they don't have a cover charge.
correct.
You go to the brew fest, you pay a cover charge and you get lots of little
Sam.
samples.
Right, they check
I
your
know
ID
this
when you
because
come in.
My
Yes, of
daughter
course.
used
Yeah.
oh,
to sell hops for the extension service.
great. So I think we understand
Okay.
the three proposals here. I think I'd like to turn to Tucker and hear legislative council's response. We have, I think we have time, unless we would rather hear how the department feels about the other couple of them. But I think I'd rather settle this and make our decisions about whether we want to include these. I think we're gonna have more work done on 3, so I'm not gonna ask us to vote on whether to include these yet or not, because we're gonna wait. We could do the first 2 and wait on the third.
Good morning, Tucker
Good morning,
Anderson,
Tucker.
Legislative Council. I'll move through the proposals in order that they're presented in the memo submitted by the department, highlight a few things, and then I actually have a few additional notes that I wanted to flag just from Title VII review over the last couple weeks, months, years. I don't know how long I've been in the vortex, but all right, the festival permit and educational sampling event changes. You heard the policy decisions you may have to make in those sections. My suggestion from a drafting point would be to actually just keep the festival permit language where it is in the section it's in and make the different policy choices within that section, such as changing the name, changing the amount that can be served at a combined event, instead of rewriting 2 sections to accomplish one change.
So change
It would
name
be-
and change amount.
That would be the most efficient. Whatever the policy decisions presented here, if you agree with them, we can make it within the existing festival permit section and update it to be the limited event,
Festival permit
right?
and the sampling festival, or the fan set.
For the other events that are looking to serve full pour beverage alcohol at, was it the Garlic Festival?
No book stock. I mean, we all have thousands. I mean, there are thousands.
Right. There are in Title VII, there are quite a few permits all hovering around this. One that I just pulled up, the special venue serving permit, is substantially similar to what's being proposed, but it restricts it to art galleries, bookstores, public libraries, or
I remember
museums.
doing
Yes.
Right.
that, and
So,
Why do I
the
think-
question you may have to tackle with this is, who are the entities that are getting permitted by the department that are serving the alcoholic beverages? Why are they unable to get one of the existing permits? And how could you modify one of those existing permits to make sure that they're captured? Or to go through and amend the educational sampling to give the department what they're asking for in this second instance. If it's a caterer that's at this garlic festival, caterers can get
Caterers can
licenses.
already do this.
manufacturers can get special events permits. It's limited. They can't serve both boards, but they can still get those permits. And, you know, here you have specific entities that can purchase through a wholesale dealer beverage alcohol to sell the events hosted by specific organizations. So perhaps that's something we could look at to affect this policy. So,
Sounds like actually, if we had the time, which we may not, it would make sense to streamline all those special permits, unite them in one place and list them all in one place. And does sound like, given all those, it does make some sense to streamline.
It would be interesting to look at a chart that shows all instances of off-premises consumption and shows each segment, how it's currently permitted and what the differences are. And that may help us understand better how to simplify it
But maybe
and unify it.
easier at some point just to say what is on premises if we keep doing more off premises.
fortunately for you all, unfortunately for Damian Leonard, I believe that Damian did make a chart of all the existing licenses and permits during the Title VII reorganization and rewrite.
Damien spent one summer updating. the
Oh,
liquor
I reported
statutes.
it on the floor, I remember.
Were there any haikus?
We
Title,
hadn't gotten to tech, it was a big technical question.
There
So,
were some that hadn't been
The,
updated since prohibition.
yeah,
you know, the remainder of this until you get to the fourth class, the changes from board to department in certain instances, and some of the cleanup. I can't testify as to whether this matches practice, but in each instance where the board is being removed, something you should keep in mind is that that is a legislative body consisting of appointed members. You can't have a board that is completely comprised of the same political party. There are restrictions on its composition.
but this wouldn't change that.
This would shift it to the department, which is under the joint authority of the commissioner and the board. So although it may be changing practice, the legislative effect is in fact substantive. So review those provisions. If they make sense, tell me, we'll add it to the bill.
You say the last part about the supervision of the commissioner and the board? What is,
The department, as it is defined, consists of the Board of Liquor and Lottery and the Commissioner of Liquor and Lottery, who have supervision of the department. There are some potentially conflating and confusing provisions at the beginning of Title VII that state that the Board of Liquor and Lottery has authority, supervision, and management over the sale of spirits and fortified wines in the state. And the commissioner also has very similar authority. But again, anytime you are shifting the term from board to department, you are now incorporating that joint authority, which would likely be under the commissioner, and eliminating the interpretation that this is an exclusive authority of the department's legislative body, which is the Board of Liquor and Lottery. And
So-
again, they may not actually be doing any of these things, so the change may match practice.
I assumed that that was in with the different political parties on the board because the commissioner works for the governor. And you could have a monopoly. There was a time where this, coming out of prohibition, was a very sensitive issue, and I can see where the legislature might have wanted balance.
I won't say that this was within, the presumption of the courts is that this was all within the mind of the General Assembly during the Title VII rewrite, which included, for example, the extension of the term of the Commissioner of Liquor and Lottery from 2 years to 4 years, the merging of what was formerly two separate administrative agencies, lottery and liquor, into one department.
And now there's one board.
Yes, and the commission.
But the board. The board does the judicial work. Yeah, you know, you appeal,
They also have the
you're-
authority to adopt rules, which is why they're the legislative body.
so they can adopt rules.
As can the commissioner.
Right, okay. But
So,
they don't have any control over the budget.
well, they're
Well,
charged.
maybe
I
they do
think-
in statute, but
Okay,
it's not.
I think
So that's
given,
interesting.
given our time, I think what would be helpful here
Mhm.
is to understand more fully the board's, is there actually a requirement that the board be balanced politically?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, that is in the composition of the board.
Although it's sort
I
of
don't have it
strange
on
to
the
think that, yeah,
Yes.
everybody has to say what, they're not running for anything. So, yeah, it has to be balanced fully. And if we could see the charge of the board, I think that might be helpful. You just said it, that you just said that
I
they're,
can send you the statutes.
if you could send us, well, or just that, their job description. And maybe we should speak to the chair of that board. Is there a chair of the board?
Good.
And who is the current chair?
It's Marty Mannion, and I can send you his information.
That would be great. And I think those two things might help us here, because I think what you raise is an interesting point. I think I can understand, and so maybe we this needs some continued work as well, given where we are. So, and and on the 4th, we're going to could Tucker work with you and with David on this,
Yes.
on this language, on the 4th class license? Is that okay? So I think more work to follow. I mean, I completely understand why the department would want to, if the board is in fact, doesn't do any of these functions, but what is their oversight requirement is, I think the question is, to take that away is, I think, the question, given what you've just said. So I think let's understand it a little bit more fully before we make this decision. So on the 1st, on the streamlining of all these special permits.
Yeah.
What do we have time for here? I mean, because I think that's really, I think Tucker brings up important points.
So I think from our perspective, it's pretty imperative that we have a change, because we have a problem now where we are forcing chambers of commerce and arts and cultural events to do something that they really are not wanting to do. And so this is meant to, as I understand, streamline the existing permits.
No,
So one existed 2 years ago before Act 70. We're asking that to come back. And then we're changing the name of another one. And so Skylar, I would like you to clarify what I'm saying. And so there's a little bit of urgency for this one, because we have so many communities and so many organizations that are seeking these licenses, and we are hamstringed inadvertently by Act 70. So that's what's happening.
So I see two things happening here. One is that we have urgency to do this for all the cultural events and economic development events that are occurring that
Right.
would like this change. I also see a need to streamline all these special permits. So why would that special venue permit not work here? That may not be what we want to decide in the week and a half we have to work on this, but perhaps we can charge for next January for us to work with Tucker, for the department to work with our legislative council. We can add a paragraph here to ask that you could do this work of streamlining all our special permits so that we are not nickel and diming on all these things, and to make a fix for immediately, but then to do a streamline for a big time fix for next year. Does that make some sense? I think
That makes sense. The other thing I would suggest in the interest of time, because there's a lot of actually cleanup that we would suggest on the role of the department and the board. So I would not suggest that we try to tackle that in the next year and a half. And I would suggest that
You
we,
mean not in the next week and a half?
sorry, did I say year and a half?
Yeah, but I think it's the reverse. You're
Correct.
suggesting that maybe
I'm
we pull the
suggesting-
board stuff too.
Yeah, don't deal with the board stuff right now because
Okay, that's fair. And I think,
I put forward something I thought was really simple. So if it's not really, those are like really basic, simple things. So I guess you decide. If you think that that's simple and you agree, you understand what I'm trying to crack, great. But we do need to do a real overhaul of Title VII in terms of the board and the commissioner and the department. And it doesn't, I'm just was attempting to clean up some stuff.
I appreciate
Frankly,
that.
I'm gonna keep doing what we do, which is
Right.
I submit the report, I submit the budget. I'm just trying to have the statute reflect reality.
No, I think that's fair, but I think we should do it with eyes wide open and
Right.
understand fully what we're either
Correct.
giving up or taking on in that.
Correct.
And so I think we should, I think that's a great idea. I think let's work on that and have that again next year and and happy to be involved and perhaps Tucker, we could have language to that effect as well, that the Department of Liquor and Lottery will make a recommendation on
Correct.
both things, both the full streamlining
Correct.
of all the special permits and further clarify board department
commissioner
relations
roles.
and governance. Does that make some sense for everybody?
Yeah, but we don't have to decide that right now either.
Yeah.
We do still have a week and a half. So the board part, we can
This
think
has to
about
go to other
separately.
committees. We don't have a full week and a half on this.
No,
one.
but we can decide what we want to work on in
Yeah,
the.
Absolutely, but I think what I'm hearing is that would be,
Put a Band-Aid on the immediate problem.
yes, put a Band-Aid on the
Plan the
immediate problem.
surgery for next year.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it shouldn't solely be the department that is in fact planning it, since the board has responsibility as well. It should be both.
Right, so I think whatever
And the legislature.
whatever language we would, which is the board and the department would
Yeah, I mean,
cover. Right,
that's exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the
what-
legislature put in that balance for a reason. It may have been the political climate of that time. And we may well say, well, that was then, this is now. But we probably should find out why they. I mean, we
I'll ask the
never make
chairs one of my
mistakes in
conversations.
legislations, right?
no, we never, no, God forbid. So let's fix the problem immediately for this summer.
Yes.
Let's
Let's get the
work on
garlic
streamlining
festival
it.
straightened out.
And let's work on board, commissioner, department, and the continued work on the Ackworth license. So maybe next Tuesday, when do we next have booze on the docket? Tuesday. So by Tuesday, we would love to see if we can a fourth class license proposal that satisfies everybody.
Yes.
But it sounds like those are, you think we're able to do that by Tuesday? Okay, great. As to the other, and then we can look at the whole bill once we have those put together. There are two other, and I know we are about to turn to cannabis. I think I'd like to reserve our discussion about what we do with S86 and S110. I think we've decided to shift the work of 107 into the fourth class license. I think that's what we've just decided to do. And we have a couple other booze bills to look at, which we'll look at on Tuesday as well.
Sounds good. May I just say, I think S87 actually is already. in-
86.
Sorry, 86.
It's already in the,
It's already in the liquor omnibus.
I think it is. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure we look at all the
Oh,
things
yeah,
that are on our
hard cider.
Yeah,
wall.
so that's already in the. liquor
That's the
omnibus.
hard cider piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Outsiders done.
And the other piece is the direct to consumer, which I think we've all agreed we're not doing this year.
Yeah, we'll have more.
That would be a huge-
information. It would be a next year in our view. I really appreciate the work that was done
Yeah.
on this to address some of the concerns that we had raised. We have a direct to consumer compliance pilot program that we're launching this summer. So next year we'll have some more information on what is the landscape
And this
of.
was hard spirits? correct?
A hard cider.
No,
Oh,
direct,
hard.
no.
Oh,
The
direct to
consumer
consumer, right.
shipping
Yes,
is meant, this is for spirits, which
That's
isn't
what I-
currently allowed,
yes,
correct?
but I remember from doing it from wine,
Yes,
that if we allow local shipping, we have to allow
correct,
everybody.
correct.
So we're gonna deal with this next year.
That's-
Yes?
Yes, we'll have more information next
Okay.
year
But
Right.
then I,
and more time to really get into the,
but how would, yeah, that work? If I can order my Irish whiskey from Ireland, why am I gonna buy it from 802 Spirit?
Because it's gonna cost less to ship.
um,
It'll cost less to
no,
ship.
it'll cost more money. That's the question, and that's
Yeah.
that's one of the questions we need to address is
Okay,
I just
how it
ordered,
impacts the 802 Spirit
Okay.
stores, yes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we are
Are we
moving
all set?
moving forward. Is there something else, Charles, you look? Okay, great. I think we're going, thank you, David. Thank you, Skylar. Thank you, everybody. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break and start on cannabis.